Hey guys, it's Brooke. Welcome to Inside Renovation. Happy Valentine's Day. We're so excited about this conversation. Pastor Cody and his wife Jessica is joining us on this episode. And y'all, we're going to spill the tea in this episode with a little bit of relationship red flags. Now, not just for married or relationships. We're talking single, family. We got a lot to talk about in today's episode, so make sure you stay tuned in. Happy Valentine's Day, guys.
Yeah, let's go. The day of love. Me and you. Let's go.
Do you guys have any fun little Valentine's Day traditions that you guys do as a couple?
Not really.
I'm bad, y'all. I'm bad about Valentine's Day. I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. It's such a holiday made up.
Yeah.
The one thing that I told him way back when at the very beginning, I was like, babe, I really like roses and I like white, not red, because he was always bringing me red.
Yeah.
And I felt bad to tell him.
Yeah.
That I really like white.
You have to communicate those things because
Yeah.
it's so much more special when you get something you love than
That's
like
right.
you're like, oh, cool, red roses. I'm just gonna put these over here and hope they die fast, you know?
Chocolates I don't like with weird cream filling. I don't know. Like,
You don't have to. That's okay.
yeah, like I feel bad because it is Valentine's Day and you're on the podcast. It's like, what are you doing tonight? Taking your wife on a date? Not kind of date night at the church, but
Yes.
I'm not a big Valentine's guy.
That's
I'm
okay.
more memories and Valentine's falls. I'm sorry, babe. You know I love you.
I know.
I love your little fancy tale. It's fine.
I see what you did there with her hat. Yeah. Well, it's all right because my husband and I, our first Valentine's Day together, I was like at a work event and then he like planned this whole night. And then I was done with work and he was just like, you just don't look like you're into this situation. And I was like, can we please just get Taco Bell and go back to my place and just chill?
Yeah.
So every Valentine's Day, Taco Bell,
Perfect.
and that's it. Like,
That's
you don't have to go spend
There
$600
you go.
at dinner. I don't
Yeah.
need roses.
That's right.
Not- it's just like
Tonight
simple things are good.
we're doing date night
Yeah.
at the church.
Yeah.
We called it date night. For everybody else that doesn't typically do things midweek for Valentine's Day.
hard.
So we're doing it at the church, having a panel of people just talking through red flags.
Yeah.
So we just kicked off that series on Sunday and talking about red flags in relationships, marriage, singles, parenting, dating, everything, family. So we're just going to have a panel and we're just going to have some conversation, and our youth are going to be serving them food.
Mm-hmm.
Demas is, I think, balling on a budget. Come
Let's
on, somebody.
go.
But Demas is like,
It's good.
It's good.
It's
We got a
good.
good price from them. And so then we're charging, of course, for that. But all of the money goes to benefit our students going to their first Camp Motion conference this summer.
So cool.
So, yeah, we're mission-minded this
Yeah.
Valentine's
Be a
Day.
nice switch up.
And it'll be cool. Yeah.
I mean, listen,
And we got 3 kids now.
This-
So just
I
kind of
know.
like, it's like,
Right.
what,
this
what do you
also
do?
could be a new tradition, date night at the church. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
like
true.
I'm here
That
for
sounds
it.
super lame. People are
It
like, wow.
does. I
Say you're,
It's not lame.
say you're a pastor without saying you're a
Yeah.
pastor. What did you do on Valentine's? We had date night. It's like, all right, cool.
feel it
Oh
from
my
everybody
goodness.
listening. That's
Well,
lame.
if you're
Y'all-
watching this, please let us know if you guys have any fun little traditions. We'd love to see what yours are,
Yeah.
or if you're going to be at date night tonight, we'd love to know that too.
Yeah, there's
But
like 50. There's quite a bit of people coming to date night. So
Let's
we're not alone in
go.
this. It's all right.
Exactly.
We're not that weird.
And as we go through these, we're going to have a little bit of fun
Yeah.
with Pastor Cody and with Jess about just some relationship red flags that just come up. Maybe they've came up in the past and just some
That's
of those
right.
things. We're just going to have a little fun on the podcast today. So
Yeah.
if you have anything to say about these red flags, let us know in the comments too.
Yeah. And that comes from, by the way, I kind of set this up like with a verse from Proverbs 27. And this is why it's important. It says, the prudent or the wise sees danger and takes refuge, but the foolish keeps going and pays the penalty. So what that means is wise people see the red flags
Mhm.
Yeah.
and they pay attention and they stop. Foolish people ignore these red flags and then they pay the price for it. Right. And so
Facts.
it's like
Yep.
that idea of like you're at the beach and there's a red flag and it's like, hey, don't swim. And then it's like, I don't care. I'm getting in the water anyway.
Yep.
And then you get sucked out to sea.
That's him.
That's me.
That's what he
Yep.
does at the beach.
We're going to talk about this
Yeah,
because he
we
did
are.
tell me about
We're
this.
going to talk about this next week.
Yeah, he told me about this and I
Yep.
was like, oh, we have to go there.
That's
so
right.
next week on the
That's
podcast,
right.
we'll talk about
So that's the
that.
idea. We want to help you see red flags, maybe
Yeah.
in your relationships, specifically like love relationships, whether
Mhm.
you're dating or maybe you're single. Maybe this is like, oh, that makes a lot of sense why me and my ex didn't work out.
Yeah.
But if you're married, let me just say
Preface this real quick.
You do have red flags in your marriage.
Yep.
Okay. We do. that does not mean you get to dip out of your marriage and just be like, I'm out, we're leaving, we're getting a divorce. It means that it's probably time for you to stop ignoring them and have a conversation and just begin working through them, whatever that may look like. And so anyway, go for it.
Me go for it. I was like, you got the first red flag.
Yeah.
In your phone right there.
All right, let's talk about it.
So this is just going to be kind of a little open conversation.
Let's
Jess,
talk about
we'll
it.
go to you first.
All right.
Here's a red flag I've experienced.
Uh-oh.
Not
She's
from
like,
you.
with me?
Not from you, from previous relationships. When they treat you like super sweet, but everyone else is like, yo, they're a jerk.
Yes.
That's a red flag.
Red flag.
Big red flag.
Major.
What's y'all's thoughts on that?
I mean, listen, I feel like when you're close to it like that, like you're all in love and you're all, you're all starry eyed. Like this is so romantic, whatever. But other people see around, the BS, if I can say that.
You can say that.
And I just feel like your people around you are not people that are coming for you. They're people that have your back. So if you can't listen to your friends that have your back, I think it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, that's
what you
also
just
a red
said. That's
flag.
a red flag.
Right. Yeah.
When you don't listen to your friends that have your back and they're warning you, hey, get away from that person. You have a red flag in your life right there.
For sure. I can think back to college. And this happened to me where one of my sorority sisters was telling me something about my boyfriend at the time. He got with another girl and I didn't believe her. And I should have. Yeah. Because she had my back and she was in my corner. And that just began a long road for me that was more painful. And instead of just listening to her and being like, hey, and then having a conversation right up front and then ending it, that would have saved me a long road of heartache.
Yeah.
The Bible,
right then and
the
there.
Bible is relevant. You pay the price. If you ignore the red flags, you pay the price.
You pay the price.
100%.
That's right.
So I feel like we're spilling the tea today. Like I just want to like take my liquid death and go.
I got real personal there, and I did. But you know what?
It's true.
I can relate.
Let's go a little further with kind of that sort of red flag.
Yep.
Being with someone that is cheating on you and staying with them as they continuously cheat on you. That's a red flag for the person, right? Not obviously for the person that's cheating, but also it's a red flag for the person for staying, right?
Right.
For sure.
That's tough. That's happened to me. That happened to me in college with this one guy. He cheated. Cheated.
I stayed
multiple times, and I stayed every single time. I just believed.
I just believed it.
Right.
And it's like rose-colored glasses.
That's one of
it
those
really
that's one of those that you can't ignore, though.
Yeah,
like if you have suspicion, and you want to assume the best about people, and I think you kind of get literally like blinded by love, where it's like, oh, I just love them so much, and they would never. But then I think a red flag in that is if they're hiding stuff from you. Yeah. If you grab their phone and they're getting real mad, but let's talk about some of the red flags. Like, how do you know that? Right? It's like when they're constantly like lying about where they are, or hey, listen, I have a pastor friend of mine where he challenged men to take off. What's the thing on the phone that what's it called? The
passcode.
No, where like nurses use it.
The screen.
Oh, the screen.
It's like a privacy screen.
Yeah, like a privacy screen. Like apparently that's a thing, like having privacy screens so that like no one can see what you're looking at.
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
Like that kind of stuff. It's like secrecy is like one of the first red flags something is going on. Now I say that let me preface it. If you just started dating somebody, give me your phone. It's like, well, wait, that's a red flag in them because that's trauma.
That's controlling.
That's like
that can be
controlling. It's like, I've known you. We went on 2 dates and now you're trying to go through my phone. Yeah. That doesn't mean there's a problem with me. It probably means there's a red flag in you. You know, so like totally. I think, but like, if you're married and like your spouse can't get in your phone, that's a red flag.
100%.
It may not be you're cheating, but it may be that you're looking at stuff that you're not supposed to be. You're hiding something, And so I think that's a like, it's a red flag. I think it's also, it feels like that so many people too, like will go back to their ex.
Oh yeah.
Like cheating, like, oh, I'm going to go back to my ex. Or like you break up for like a week and like they go back to their ex real quick and hook up with them and then come. And so it's like another red flag.
Yeah.
Is that if someone is unwilling to let go of stuff that their ex gave them.
Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Or just like, I'll refuse to like delete the pictures on it. Like it's again, if you've been together for a day, pause. You know what I'm saying? But like, when it's like you're in a relationship with someone for like a year or two and it's like they can't let go of their ex.
Yeah.
And they're constantly talking about them, texting them, like still like got stuff they gave them. And like, it's just like, oh, it's just so meaningful. It's like, yo, there's something weird. Like,
well, it's
flag.
You know what I'm saying?
It's funny that you say that because I have a friend specifically, and she is always like, oh yeah, this was my ex's sweatshirt. I don't want to get rid of it because it looks cute, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, I don't care if this sounds weird to anybody, but like things carry a spirit of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and if not, you at least like when you wear, you know where it came from.
right.
Yeah.
And you think of them.
Yeah,
like,
you wear it, you think of them.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and then especially if y'all have been like sexually active.
yes.
Like I know for a guy, it's like
soul
you
ties are in
all
there.
kinds of thoughts. Yeah. All kinds of thoughts start going around in your head. They just do.
Yep.
So it's like, you gonna have like, come on, you gonna
And
have to
I'll
cut.
say things like that. I'm like, girl, you got to get rid of that. Like that's hindering you from advancing in your,
That's right.
you know, your just yourself, like, you know, you being a better person. And I'm like, just get rid of it. And
Yeah, for sure.
that's a battle with some of my friends. It really is.
All right. I got another one.
Yeah.
A little different. Let's talk family for a second.
Okay.
Red flag in the family would be, you have set no boundaries with in-laws.
That's good.
We had that red flag.
We did.
Both of us.
Yeah.
On your end and on my end. And let me speak to it before we give a little tea here. It's your responsibility to set the boundaries with your parents.
100%.
Like, so for me, it's not my job to set boundaries for her family.
Right.
It's her job.
Mhm.
And likewise, it's my job to set boundaries. And I think we both struggled with it like early on.
Yeah.
From like a controlling standpoint. And like you're only child and your parents were like, I got to be involved. Like they made us try to buy a house.
Oh my
Like,
gosh. Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a second?
She's like the tea.
I'm sorry. We'll get into my family too. You probably shouldn't have done what I just did. That's a red flag of like drama.
You want to talk about this, right?
Still remembering that.
I do.
Oh, I'm going to talk about it. Okay.
Just a little bit. You can talk about, let's talk about the red flags maybe you had when it comes to like just boundaries with your family. And then I'll talk about some of mine
Yeah.
too.
Well,
And let's hear from you too.
Well, yeah. I mean, what you said is important with talking to your own family and trying to establish those boundaries. It is hard because then, like my family I experienced was like, you're only having this conversation with me because of Kody. And if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have this conversation. So I'm viewing everything that you're saying as reflective from him. And then it still was hard to manage.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to manage any way you go, but that's the better way to go about it.
Right.
And then just like telling your family about your arguments or your disputes within your
You
marriage.
want to wave that?
Bad.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tell them why.
Because then it just bites you.
That's right.
Because you get over it. You and your spouse work through it.
All the parents
good.
never forget.
and then
So
the
good.
parents
Nope.
never forget.
Nope.
I mean, so that's
and your parents,
hard.
rightfully so, as we will be, are going to be loyal to their kid.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I love you, but it is 100% conditional. I love you if you treat my child
Yeah.
right.
Right.
You start treating them wrong, I don't love you no more. You know what I mean? And it's like, you bring that parent into that argument that you had, and it was a knock. I'm so, you call your mom or dad. That's a red flag, right?
Yeah.
Like it's time to grow up, get some friends, get a pastor, call somebody else.
Right.
Stay off social media where your family can see it. Like,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
run to family because yes, they have your best interest. And it feels so good to like, oh yeah, see, somebody has
somebody in
my
your
back.
corner,
It's like,
yeah.
well, that's biased anyway.
And
Sure.
they're more than likely, like 99% of the time, they're going to take your side, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if
yeah.
you're
Now,
going to
you
feel
got somebody hopefully that won't, but
right.
for the
You're
most
going to
part.
feel justified in it, and you're going to feel,
Yeah.
but like you said, you need those people around you, that like wise counsel that's going to like kind of whip you back in and be like, hey, listen, I don't know.
Right.
Like
Kinda sounds like you might be in the
may
wrong.
have a little red flag too.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's what you need is you need people to help.
Yeah.
Because what I found is like it's so easy to see red flags in other people
Totally.
and so difficult to see them in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And they're blind spots and they're all kinds of things. So it's like you got to have people to go like, hey, I know you think this issue's with them. This is actually trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have trust issues from the past 4 relationships you've been in. And now you're projecting. And like, so for me, I'll get vulnerable a little bit. Like I had a hard time. My family's super complicated of setting those boundaries because mine were freaking everywhere, especially around like holidays.
Mm-hmm.
I think our first year of marriage, we fought more about family boundaries
Yeah, we did.
Then I don't know
that
if we
first year was hard.
I don't even know if we fought about anything else.
No, it was more like family. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, I have a dad and a stepmom and a stepdad who technically isn't my stepdad because he divorced my mom, but he's one who raised me. So I got him, and then I got my mom, and then I got her new boyfriend. And it's like, everybody wants to come over for Christmas, babe. Let's do that. Or let's go to 6 Christmases in one day.
Yeah.
And like, for me though, that was normal.
Yeah.
So like, when I was a child, because of the home I grew up in, I woke up at 6:30. We opened presents. I was out the door by 8. I was at a different place at 9:30. I was 2 hours away in Manchester by noon.
Wow.
We went to Brentwood that night, and I got home at my dad's and opened my dad's gifts at like 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you don't realize some of the dysfunction.
Yeah.
Again, love my family, but you don't realize what you bring in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you don't set the boundaries, how that can be a challenge. So I think the red flag really isn't that you need boundaries, but it's like if someone has the refusal to set them,
Totally.
especially in a marital context
Yeah.
of like, hey, she's my number one.
Mhm.
Sorry, mama, you're not number one no more.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I have to honor my wife because this is the most important relationship
Right.
for me and her, for our children, for everybody. Right. So
Mhm.
it's like, I think you got to go, if they're unwilling to like, hey, mama's still coming first and you've been married 10 years, like
Yeah.
it's time to probably have a little bit of a combo. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Because that's gotta,
Yeah.
that shift has got to happen for you to ever have the marriage that you wanted to have.
Totally. And
You
I
know?
think that so many marriages, that's one of the first fights. It's like all of the
Yeah.
things that you're used to growing up and
Yeah.
that what your
Yep.
spouse is used to growing up and how
Yep.
you guys like did holidays or birthdays, even like things like that. It's just like,
Mm.
well, I did it this way. So, and everybody thinks they're right. Right. And it's
Yep.
just like
Right.
coming to that common ground. But then also, like you said, setting those boundaries because
Yep.
it's just like, I can't have a feud or, I can't talk to your parents about
Right.
this boundary. Like this is
Yeah.
your job as my husband to talk to your family and then
Mhm.
set those boundaries and really coming to grips with that. You're like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but like you said,
Yeah,
like
it's hard.
this is our
It's
number
hard to
one
do.
now. Like our family is priority.
That's right.
Yeah.
And before you go like calling out the red flags in everybody,
Right.
let me circle back to this real quick
Mhm.
because again, like Jessica and I had a conversation about something, I guess a month ago, and I was really frustrated and hurt by someone in my family about something. And she's like, hey, babe, I think you may be just like projecting and you may be like looking for, remember this conversation?
Mhm.
I think you may be looking for them to like fail you in that way. And you assume that they're thinking that too.
Mhm.
And when they do, you're like, see, I was right.
Yeah.
And like, it was a hard pill to swallow because that was a red flag in me.
Yeah.
And I think that again, with a lot of us, it's like I've counseled and met with so many people over the years that I've pastored, that I've coached or whatever, that they're like, I just always say, this is going to get real personal. And I say this in like love. If I could give you a big hug right now, I would give you a big hug. But I hear people that will be like, I feel like I always date jerks.
Mhm.
I always date shallow people.
Mm.
And it's like, there's got to come a point where if like every relationship you're in, that person lacks integrity, you attract who you are.
Mhm.
That's
like,
so good.
And like, there's a common denominator
Mhm.
there. And yeah, it may be they're jerks, but it's also that there's a reason you're attracted to them.
Yeah.
And that's a red flag in us that we have to just realize of like, I'm constantly with shallow people. Maybe my values
Yeah.
are also shallow
Yeah.
because like you attract who you are, you know?
Yeah.
And so I say, I'm going to give you a big hug again. I just say that because again, it's so easy. Jesus talks about this to point out the speck in somebody else's eye
Totally.
and miss the freaking plank.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say freaking, sorry, Jesus. He missed the plank in your own. And so
Yeah.
part of the whole red flags thing is like, first got to go, I got to acknowledge there's some
Self-reflecting.
Yeah.
red flags in me for sure.
That is so good.
Yeah.
That
All
is
right.
so good.
Let's see. Another red flag. How about the red flag of, oh, here you go, because this is great for marriages and dating. If when you get together or you're together, they like leave and get rid of all their friends
Mm.
and they only want to spend time with you.
Oh.
Whew. Yeah. That's tough. That's a tough one.
That's a real thing.
That is.
We probably all walk through that one. I
Yeah.
don't know about y'all, but
That is,
Oh, man.
that makes things awkward.
yeah.
And also it would freak me out. I haven't had to experience that personally, but I've had friends that have.
Yeah.
And so
I still have my friends.
and it's like a very, it's almost like a mind game that you're watching your friend go through and you're wanting
Yeah.
to protect them, but they're they're not seeing it. And it's like that person has a stronghold over them. But they're so manipulative in that to make it believable. Like this is okay. This is healthy to do.
We're in love now.
This is what happens. This is what you do. And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah. And I think that I've had friends that have dealt with the same thing. And I feel like that's one of the hard things to communicate to your friends, where it's just like, I know that this is fun and shiny and new, but also the fact that like, you're supposed to do life with other people. Like you can't just have each other, right? Like, and you can like the whole fairy tale, like, well, we have each other, we have everything. You have to have community.
You need people.
Yes.
Other people are supposed to be there. And if you're ditching everybody else to be with just one person, it's just like, ooh, I don't know.
Because then like, we'll get back to the whole, like when y'all have problems, who are you talking to? If you don't have no friends, you're going to your family, which is a red flag and is not healthy.
Right.
It's like you need trusted people in your life. It doesn't matter if you've been married for a year, 50 years, if you just started dating, like don't neglect your friends.
Yeah.
You know, and like, especially if you're dating, like, because if it don't work out and you lost all your friends, then who you got? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
that's so true.
And I broke up a long-term relationship because there was this like expectation that I spent every waking moment with this person.
Right.
And was like, and it wasn't that like I was asked to leave my friends, but the expectation is now that she's a part of them all the time. And that I can't like ever go out with them without her.
Yeah.
And if I did, and y'all know what I'm talking about, like I'm getting blown up and like we're fighting the whole time.
Yeah. And
you know
then you're
like,
just no fun to be around.
You can't hang out with your friends because your partner's just blowing you up, talking about how you're a jerk the whole time.
And then your friends don't want to hang out with
and
you.
your friends are like, I'm tired of
dealing
dealing with that, yo.
I'm like,
you
that's
know?
another red flag.
Yeah, literally.
As a friend, like, if you got friends like that, you know what we're talking about. Like that's a challenge. So
what about this?
Okay.
This just came to my mind.
All right.
For like family, right? A family red flag.
Okay.
Of parents bringing their drama or their problems financially, whether it be, that things to their children and talking through it to their children. Did I strike a nerve there? Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, we did the red flag.
Dropped a red flag.
You lost it. Oh, it flew off.
No, it's funny that you say that. Yeah. I mean, so like my parents are both accountants.
Yeah.
And so it was very big on their part that they were viewing it as like they wanted to speak into every kind of financial thing at the very beginning
Great example.
of our marriage.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was very hard to navigate at times.
From a good place because they
it's
know
coming
money.
from a good place. Like they just care. They want us to be set up well, especially before having kids, because everybody knows that has kids. Like it is a lot harder.
That was the reference about the house earlier, by the way.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I wasn't like dogging your parents.
No. But it was just, the market was right. And they just thought it was like a short sale or something.
Aren't you glad we didn't buy that house?
Foreclosure. The short sale was like an 8-month process or something. And thank God we didn't do that.
Which can I say where that led?
Yeah.
Okay. It led to us, which just sounds so crazy. So the option was to buy a short sale, or I felt called to go into ministry and was offered to live in the BCM house at Cumberland University in Lebanon, which is like 30 miles from here. It's east of Nashville. And so our first almost year of marriage, we lived in the Baptist collegiate ministry, which I wasn't even Baptist, but anyway.
Yeah.
We lived in that house. Like on our wedding night, we came home and there were college students in our house.
Wow.
She's in her dress and I'm like,
I was in the car just waiting.
Like,
for them to leave.
y'all gotta go. Like now, you know what I'm saying? And so, but we lived there. But I think back, and I think it's why it's important to address some of these red flags and like make decisions that are best for you and understand like what God, on my end, what God was calling us to do. And like, the fact that you were willing to follow still amazes me. The fact that knowing you now, I know, right?
Because I was backing out.
We
My
weren't
parents
like
were totally against
I was
it.
working at a mechanic shop.
I
You know what
know.
I'm saying? And I'm like, I feel called to ministry, and it's like this opportunity
My parents
happened.
were like, what?
Yeah.
And I mean, I was
rightfully
always
so, right? They want to protect you.
Yeah, and I was like always involved in ministry, and like we knew that's what I was going to do. But I just graduated. I was ready to get married, so I'm like, hey, I'll work wherever. I don't care, girl. I want say yes at the altar, and I'm in. I will figure it out. And then that opportunity came, And it was like, I can't believe you said yes. And we lived in that house. But I think back to like, if we wouldn't have, that set up the opportunity for me to become a youth pastor.
Yeah, for sure.
And then like the ball goes downhill.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I don't even know if we'd be here today. You know what I mean? Because there's no telling.
It was just the ripple effect.
Well, because in order to be able to pay for that house that we would have had to buy, I wouldn't have been able to take no job making $500 a month.
Yeah.
But that job was like, oh, we'll pay you $500. You can live rent free and utilities are free. And I'm like,
100%.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? And then I had to work, I think I worked 2 other jobs to make it. I was coaching all
I worked
kinds
in
of stuff.
the OR. It was like, man, we were just hustling.
But I think that just speaks to like people who love you, like your parents, like my parents, you know, they do know you. They do know you really well. But there has to come a point in your life where you got to cut the cord. I'm sorry. You know, like you gotta grow up a little bit, especially if you're a man and you're watching this and listening to this. Like there comes a point you got to be willing to make decisions and be the leader. And when you get married, that's a role that you take on in that relationship. And there's got to be healthy boundaries with both sets of parents, you know, and they can't control, they don't need access to your checking account anymore. You know what I mean? Like, let's cut that off, you know, if they're still paying for your entire livelihood, you're not 16, like
I was
cut
just
them
saying,
off and
like,
get a job.
I've got siblings who are married and mom and dad still pay for their phone bill. And I'm when is it time for you to grow up? You know what I mean? You got to grow up.
That's funny. I was just about to reference the phone bill.
Like get out the basement, quit playing video games. You know what I'm saying? Like you just have to like come to the point where it's like, all right, as much as I hate adulting, it's time to be an adult.
Right.
It's time to get a job and a second job if you want to support your lifestyle, whatever that may be. That's just part of it. And if you're not, it's a red flag.
Isn't it funny, like the beginning of like relationships, like marriage, for example, like the first like 2 years, the grind,
my Lord.
Like the grind that some people go through where it's like you're working 2 jobs or, you know, you're just figuring it out. You're just going with the flow and you're like, wherever you want to go, babe. And it's just like the amount of faith and the amount of just like trust that takes. It's so cool. I
got one. I'm going to go a little pastoral here for you just for a second. Okay. Let's kind of talk about as it pertains to faith because I've seen so many dating relationships, marital relationships, family, like just name it. When it comes to faith, because that's a spiritual soul level thing, there are ties to that.
Yeah.
And I think when somebody has a warped, skewed view of God, the church you attend, like, yo, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
It just is. Let me say this as your pastor. If you go to Renovation Church, somebody got a problem with Renovation Church.
That's a red flag.
You know what I'm saying? But I like if they had a worldview of God, the Bible, the church, and they're just like, no, I'm not doing that or whatever. Yeah. Like the amount of marriages that haven't made it because one spouse is like committed to God and the other one want nothing to do with it. Again, you should work it out. Even the Bible tells you that if you're married to an unbeliever, stay with them. Right. And allow your holiness or your pursuit with God to help sanctify or grow them to become more like Christ. And God could actually save your spouse through you. Right. So I'm not telling you to leave them. I'm just saying there's a lot of times people have these red flags, but they get so blinded by love. They're infatuated with how somebody looks and they just overlook like, well, I don't really care. We'll work it out. Who cares if they're Jewish and I go to non-denominational church, we'll figure it out. It's like, because now you just involve the Jewish parents.
Literally. Right. And that's not going to fly.
You know what I'm saying? Like
complicated.
Yeah. Like I got asked to do a wedding one time and it was like, hey, this person's Catholic and this person's Jewish. I was like, how's that going to work? You know, they actually, I talked to them and I asked them about that question and they're like, I think we're going to find somebody else. You know what I mean? It's like, and I didn't tell them they couldn't get married. I was just like, have y'all talked about this?
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference.
It's important.
Like,
Heck
like what you believe is way different, you know? And again, I'm not speaking against like, you know, again, I know people that I'm really close to that are married to somebody who's a non-believer and all that. And like, hey, I'm not condemning that. I'm not saying, you know, the deed is done, right? So for me, it's like, okay, now you got to work through and figure out how do we live in unity and peace and like, how do we make this thing work with our different beliefs? And it can be done. It just, if it can be avoided, it might be wise for you to just kind of consider. Yeah. If you dating somebody though, and you ain't married and you're like, oh, I love Jesus, you know, and they don't, just let me help you. Just red flag.
Just
Go
wave
ahead
it.
and cut it off.
Just wait.
Stop missionary dating, flirting to convert. And just stop.
Flirt to convert. I'm done.
Like, oh, I'm gonna get them saved. It's like, no, like that's not your job. You can't save them, okay? Or you can't raise them.
Maybe just invite them to church once, and if it doesn't go well, then just
See how it goes.
kindly see them out.
Well, so okay, all right. I know I got a lot of thoughts on this because I mean, like I'm preaching on it right now. So like obviously, I don't know. Some of this may be in a sermon, some of it may not be in a sermon. Who knows? But like I was thinking, if you have someone who like, okay, I had a friend. I'll put it this way. I had a friend come up to me. He's like, yo, he's at the gym. He's like, bro, I gotta get your advice. I'm not a Christian. Like I believe in God and all that stuff. I'm not a Christian. I just started dating this like fine girl, loves the Lord. I've been going to church with her. She's so godly. She's so whatever. Bro, like, what do I do? And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, and I'm like, do you see? He's like, or he asked me actually, and it actually spawned on this idea of red flags. This was months ago. And he said, do you like, is there any like red flags I should be a part? And I'm like, can I be real with you? And he's like, yeah. I was like, it's a red flag to me that if she's so in love with Jesus, like you say she is, that she would date you.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
But it reminds me of my mom saying something when I was wanting to get with you. And she's like, do you think like, Kody, I know what you're doing on the weekends. I know how promiscuous you are. Yeah. I know you're partying.
Yeah.
Do you think a girl like her would want to date a guy like you? I was like, oh,
you're like, good.
Ouch. Thank you. No, the answer was no. And she didn't, but it's like, if you're somebody that really loves the Lord and all, it's like, if that's really true, you wouldn't date somebody who's not. So there's like that, like red flag in you moment.
Are they still together?
I don't know. They don't go to renovations.
Okay,
Don't be trying to guess who it is. Like, no. Like this person don't even live in our area. Okay. But anyway, it's just a thought.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Just a thought.
That's true.
What other thoughts do we have, y'all?
There's one for me.
Okay.
With friendships I've seen or even watching this on TV shows, man, and you just watch it just like crumble. The conversations of like, do you want to have kids before you then commit your life to that person?
Yeah.
And then they end up not wanting kids and you do, or vice versa.
You got to have that conversation.
You got to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Also about debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a red flag, by the way.
That's a big.
If they don't want to talk to you about what debt they have, and they're like, well, we'll talk about that when we get married.
Right.
Nope.
Like, I'm going to try and lock you in before you can leave.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I got $150,000 worth of credit card debt. It's like, welcome.
Which actually, it's crazy that you guys say that because I actually have a friend who this happened to her. Her man did not want to talk about anything when it came to finances.
Oh, man.
She was so like, just, the rose-colored glasses are on. They get married. And then randomly one day, just literally without even no explanation,
sad.
just we're getting a divorce. And that was it. And she never saw him again. And I was just like,
oh, wow.
And she was like, and then I found out about all of this debt and it literally crushed her. And I'm like, dude,
wow.
Those, I mean, listen, and it doesn't happen to everybody, but if they're not talking to you about finances,
talk about those sensitive topics.
And in marriage, regardless, you're going to have hard conversations.
Yeah.
Finances is one of those hard conversations. And if you can't be open and honest about that, wave that thing, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
I'll give you another one that goes like kind of across all types of different relationships is when it's a red flag when you have to pretend to be someone you're not in order to like fit in or be around or get with someone else.
Yeah.
When it's like, I'm not able to be who I really am because I'm trying to like, I feel the need and you make me feel the need to be something I'm not, or you won't love me.
Totally.
Right. Like that's a red flag in that relationship that it's unhealthy.
And now
people are falling in love with a fake version of you.
That's
and you
not
can't
sustainable.
You can't sustain that.
It's exhausting.
Well, and
to live that way.
That was a personal red flag that I dealt with because when I lived out in LA, like I was a completely different person and I didn't know, I just like, I was in it and doing whatever. And anytime I would go to visit my mom or like go home to visit or even like video chat my parents, they'd be like, who are you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I remember specifically, I went away for like a week and a half on this like crazy family trip. We never take big trips together, but I went out to the beach with my parents and it was just like this whole big thing. And when I left, I was like, who was I? Like, it was this weird, like, come to Jesus moment where I was just like, I am different. Like, I'm waving the red flag at myself. I'm like, it was an insane moment, but it's so true. When you like get around certain people all the time and you just start to kind of like morph into who they
It's
are.
your environment.
You
Right.
just,
right.
you do. You really
That's
do.
why your friends matter. It's why your family matters. And like,
Yep.
I think just some advice and things I've learned. You can love people without giving them always the same level of access they've always had.
Totally.
So this particularly goes with like old friends
Yeah.
or family even, where it's like, hey, I can love you. We can be in the same, but what like there's certain parts of me and access with me that you can't get because bad company corrupts good character.
Yeah.
You're not like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go be a missionary. Like that's not that's not smart, right?
Yeah.
It's unwise, you know? And then I think the last one we can end on, because this is maybe a hot topic a little bit.
We're spilling more tea.
In a different way. But I think that like we've talked so much on this podcast about mental health.
Totally.
And I know it's some relationships that I have, whatever the context may be, that when you're around somebody, they're giving you a constant level of like anxiety, doubt, fear, just like you just like can't fathom being like, it's hard to be like, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
That person may not be healthy for you. And it may not be forever they're not healthy for you. But even in certain seasons, it's like, hey, right now, it's like, I just, when I'm around, like I can't be around you because it just does something in me. But again, yes, that's a red flag on them, but it's also a red flag in you of like, there's probably I probably need to go to counseling. Like there's probably some counseling that needs to get done.
Yeah.
I probably need to talk to somebody of like why I always feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's been moments in my life where that's been the case with like people who I'm close with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been super challenging. Like when there's moments where it's like, I get around certain people and like, I'm pretty talkative, as you can see.
We all are. We're all here.
I get quiet.
Yeah.
And like, I almost just detach and it's like, it's just easier to get through it.
Yeah.
And I've had to have seasons where it's like, I've had to separate myself
Yeah.
almost like I'm gonna fast from these people
Mhm.
for a little bit.
No, for real. Yep.
You know, and like I need to create some separation and get my own heart in the right spot so that I'm able to like be the person I know God called me to be and be a positive influence when I'm around them. Like, and there's some moments where I hadn't been able to because it's like, I'm so like anxious about, you know, and it gets weird, especially, and I'm not necessarily referencing this, but it gets weird with family.
Yeah.
Especially in my role
Mhm.
of like, well, I'm still the same 5-year-old little boy,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
and it's
you're
like, you know, I'm not this grown man that's a pastor with 3 kids and a wife. You know,
Right.
it's like, that's not who I am. So it's like, you just get these like, ooh, moments.
Mhm.
And I think that's something we probably should pay attention to.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think too, it's really important to listen when people can call that out. Like I know, for example, like my husband, he'll be like, you've been hanging out with so-and-so, haven't you? And I'll be like,
Uh-oh.
Oh,
what?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe you're right. Maybe I don't need it, you know? And it's just like when you
Right.
start like
Yeah.
almost kind of how we were talking about before, you like morph into that person or
yeah.
Yep.
you start being more doubtful in yourself or your
Sure.
self-esteem goes
Mhm.
lower
Yep.
or like something, or you start
Yeah.
gossiping more. He was just
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? It's like you
Yeah.
are a product of your environment and really
So true.
being able to kind of like separate yourself from that
Yeah.
it's so important.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
What y'all, I'm just gonna say, what a good podcast
This
today.
is a good one.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was great. Thanks for having that convo. Brooke,
Yeah,
thanks
and
for
if you
setting
guys
it
have
up.
any fun little maybe relationship red flags that we didn't touch on
Yeah.
that you want to
Share
just kind
'em.
of like talk about in the comments,
Yeah, I
let's
got
do it.
like 3 or 4 more weeks in this series. So like, yo,
Yeah.
hit them up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
let me know because I'll use them probably.
Yeah,
Right.
like,
You
I'll
know
put
what I
these in
mean?
my sermons. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you guys
yeah,
for
yeah.
watching today. We appreciate you being here.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.